Okay, good morning, JCC Irvine. I'm so excited to talk to you, and I'm sorry that we're not face to face, but this feels pretty close, as Jerry was saying. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm going to talk a little bit about my book, Stress Resets, and just a little bit about why I wrote this book. This is the question everyone asks when I speak about this. First of all, I just feel like the tools that I teach my clients have personally changed my life. And I really wanted to spread these beyond the walls of my office for the price of a salad, especially in Orange County or Los Angeles. This is what salad costs these days. And I wrote this book shortly after the peak of the pandemic. And a remarkable thing was sort of happening in tandem, right? So many people were talking about how stressed they were. And I've seen so many clients in my practice and through my work at UCLA who spent many, many years relying on medications known as benzodiazepines, anti-anxiety drugs like Xanax and Klonopin, as a way to cope with their intense negative emotions and panic. And so many clients I work with didn't realize the incredible side effects of these medications. They're incredibly sedating, they're habit forming. And so it just seems so painfully ironic that when we feel most overwhelmed and we need all our brain power, people take medications that make them not able to think as clearly, sluggish, and then these become addictive. People can get easily used to them. And so you need to keep increasing your dose, and then they're very difficult to withdraw from. And so just having seen this so often in my practice and then hearing about this study, which sounds so crazy, but an anesthesiologist at University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Vina Graf, discovered that in researching people before they were going into surgery, which is obviously so stressful, half of the participants she looked at were able to take a benzodiazepine, these medications that are full of side effects and can be really addictive. And half of her patients were able to listen to a song called Weightless. And remarkably, the song, which is a very unique song, which was designed by a sound therapist to be very therapeutic and sedating. Actually, it's so sedating that you're not supposed to listen to it while you're driving. So remarkably, the song worked almost as well as this pill. And obviously, songs have no side effects. And so I wrote an article about this particular stress reset, listening to this song, and other resets that I wrote for the New York Times during the peak of the pandemic when there were so many news articles saying that not only were we facing a toilet paper shortage, there was also a therapist shortage. And so I wrote about this song and other ways to reset. And then I thought, there's so many incredible tools, and we need a lot more than a song to cope. And so I expanded on the tools for people to cope with a really acute stress, and also introducing tools that we should all be doing just preventatively, almost as preventative medicine, which I refer to as buffers in this book. And so I want to expand on that and offer buffers as well. And so that's kind of what I did in creating this book. And so since everybody always asks me about this song and I'm not musically inclined, I figured I would just play it for just a moment. Actually, it's not going to let me play it. But the song is called Weightless, and you're welcome to listen to it. And I actually don't even want to play it because the last thing that I want to do is make you sedated right before listening to my talk. But if you want to look it up, this is one of my favorite takeaways that I teach people. If they struggle with insomnia, or if you're a parent who has a child that refuses to go to bed, this is something that I play for my 4-year-old at least once a week, and it works wonders. And if people are looking for the song, it's called Weightless by Marconi Union. And so what since we're going to be talking about stress resets, I think it's important to even just start by acknowledging what is stress and how does that differentiate from anxiety. And so stress is when too much is coming at us. We're just overwhelmed. We feel like there's more coming at us than we can possibly manage. It's almost like you're walking uphill and you're feeling short of breath. It's just like the situation and your bandwidth are misaligned. And that is a little different from anxiety, which is when a lot of it might be in our head, right? A lot of it could be the thoughts that we're thinking, not the reality that we're facing, or physical sensations of anxiety like muscle tension or feeling short of breath. But that said, there's so much overlap, and being able to manage stress, feeling like you can manage what you're faced with will help you manage your anxiety, and the tools that we use to manage anxiety also help with stress. And I love treating stress because learning to deal with stress can prevent you from struggling with long-term struggles with anxiety. And I also think it's so key to realize that the most common measure used to gauge how stressed a person is called the perceived stress scale, which highlights that so much about stress is our perception, and that's how it's possible to start to work on stress. And so I just mentioned mindset. And so the mindset is really key because what we make of stress really makes a difference in how we cope. Did you know that in studies looking at more than 28,000 people, the belief that stress was bad for you actually made stress bad for you? Believing that stress was bad for your health actually increases your risk of dying early from stress related causes by 43%, which is really significant. And so stress isn't bad for you, but believing stress is bad for you is actually bad for you. And on the flip side, it's really exciting. Interventions that quickly teach people, some people are like, I can't change my mind about this quickly, but studies where college students are taught in a 30-minute video presentation that stress is an opportunity for growth, that with the right supports, you can kind of grow and evolve. And stress is an opportunity to help you kind of stretch the way you see yourself. And not only that, but that your physical sensations, feeling knots in your stomach, is actually a sign that you're doing well. The combination of believing that you can grow with the right support and that your body's stress response is serving rather than derailing you. Those two things, being taught those two things, actually reduced cortisol levels, your body's physical stress response, and also reduced achievement gaps, narrowed achievement gaps. And so, first generation college students exposed to this brief training led by researchers at the University of Texas in Austin actually were able to not only feel better, but start to reach their goals. And so, we need to kind of take a look at our views of stress and really see that judging stress as bad is not going to make it go away. It's going to make it haunt us. And judging our body is not going to whip our body into shape, but is going to make us more short of breath. And so, what I often do is just spend a minute also, since we talked a little bit about stress, it's also very helpful to talk a little bit about emotions. Because if we think that we can't sit with our emotions, we might do things to avoid or escape, or we might feel that much more stressed. If I feel like it's too much, I can't, like this thing is going to upset me, I can't deal with it, I don't want to check the test results, I don't want to go to the doctor, it's going to bring up emotions that I can't bear, that's going to lead to more stress because then you're going to sit in not knowing, and then you're going to delay things that might actually be quite helpful to you. And so it's not only is it important to look at what we make of our stress, like if we judge stress as bad, but also to look at what we make of our emotions. Do you judge your emotions as bad? Do you think they're going to go on forever? Do you feel anxious about being anxious? Do you judge feeling angry as shameful or something that you should feel guilty about? And so, one of the things that I really try to teach my clients is to practice staying present with their emotions as they unfold and also staying really non-judgmental, because when we don't judge and when we stay present, we come to see that emotions really come and go. And so, an exercise that I teach my clients is just seeing this firsthand. And so, I do this through introducing film clips. And obviously, our own lives are more are going to spark more intense emotions than films might, but also films are like designed to pull at our heartstrings. And so if we can stay present with film clips and we absorb this takeaway, we can sort of see that this also applies to our own lives. So for just like literally 30 seconds, I'm going to show you two films that are designed to spark intense emotions. And I'd love to invite you to do the same thing that I teach my clients to do, which is stay really present. Don't think about how this relates to your life. Just watch what's unfolding as it is unfolding without an extra layer of, personal salience or I don't like this. Okay, so we'll start with the first one.
There's no sound.
Oh, you're not hearing the sound?
No.
No, okay. Maybe even just the clip alone will.
It's too soon.
Okay, so even without the sound and even in the small window, I imagine some amount of sadness was sparked. There was some emotion of loss or concern. Um, is that what people sort of felt? I know it's a little hard without the sound, but were people able to see the image?
I saw it.
Okay. Okay. And then you could just notice sadness. And then I apologize if there's no sound, but similarly, might be able to notice this even just with the film. Is there sound for this?
Yeah. But we all remember that song, Will Ferrell, Happy. something.
Yeah. Okay. So even if you couldn't hear it, I apologize. I'm hearing the sound on my end, but even without the sound, maybe these images just spark this sense of emotions of like, seeing someone clearly, really struggling health wise, and then seeing people dancing. So just in a matter of moments, like literally, less than a minute each, we do have the chance to feel strong emotions, and our emotions really do actually fluctuate. Most people that I see actually tear up when the first video and feel compelled to dance a little bit in the second video. And and obviously our life is so different and we can't just change the channel, but in some ways we sort of can, because every moment something new is unfolding. Maybe you got a really upsetting email, and then there's like a beautiful sunset that you can kind of gaze at, or you can taste your dinner, versus like chewing over something upsetting that happened at work. And so this ability to realize that our emotions truly wax and wane. Oh no. Our emotions, hold on, I'm so sorry. Wait. Our emotions truly wax and wane. Emotions are like waves coming and going. Helps prevent us from doing things to try to run away from our emotions, distract ourselves, or, if we feel anxious about starting our taxes, to, postponing that, which only creates more stress about doing that later. So really helpful to view our mindset around stress, view our mindset around emotions, and appreciate that stress can be helpful and that emotions are truly transient. And so now, taking this from like kind of big picture views about how we view stress holistically and our emotions holistically, now let's talk about kind of the recipe of how stress unfolds in our lives and how we can intervene at multiple points along the way. So we have this like whole range of ways to exponentially feel better along the course of stress. So if you're anything like me or the clients I see, most people notice that if you take a step back, often when something stressful happens, it is human nature to start to think the worst. Unfortunately, this is the way our minds work. Rather than thinking it's okay, I got this, it'll be okay, we start thinking the worst. We think this is terrible. I can't deal with this. Not only do we think the worst, but then we can easily start to replay something upsetting after it's happened endlessly. So we are not only thinking the worst, but replaying the worst case scenario endlessly. When our mind is thinking the worst, it is very easy to start to then judge our physical sensations. We start to maybe, our mind thinking the worst is going to maybe lead to feeling like you can't breathe, or maybe even chest pain or muscle tension. And then human nature to start to think like, oh my gosh, I'm making myself sick. It's getting worse. And then these two things in tandem like create this bad duet, this dangerous duet where we're just lost in our thoughts and in our bodies. And then it's just human nature to try to distract ourselves and escape the situation. And so even something like if you think about trying to fall asleep when you know you have an early morning, telling yourself, I need to go to sleep now, I need to go to sleep now, is going to maybe make you feel restless and not able to relax. And then maybe you pick up your phone to distract yourself from all that. And then that just keeps you further awake. Or if you have something again like big to do, thinking the worst, then deciding that you're too stressed and then avoiding and doing something like online shopping or having a big snack. All of those things get in the way of feeling like you can cope. And so what we're going to talk about is ways to intervene at each point. How do we get unstuck from our thoughts? How do we change our relationship with our physical sensations so they don't scare us, but we can allow them to come and go? And how can we approach the things that matter to us rather than feeling like we need to avoid? Just by show of hands, since I can see you all, Does anyone relate to this model? Is this relatable to people? Thinking the worst, physical sensations arising and then getting lost in those and then avoiding? By show of hands, does this resonate or no, not, oh, yeah, okay. For some people, yes, and for some people, no. Okay. 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 Um, and so in addition to those ways that we compound stress by thinking the worst, getting lost in physical sensations, and then avoiding, another habit that every stress researcher talks about that takes something stressful and creates chronic stress with it is this habit called ruminating. Ruminating is this habit of going over and over. It's like chewing without digesting something upsetting that happened. And, just to illustrate this, I love a story that my mindfulness teacher, Sharon Salzberg, often tells about a man that was hiking and he developed a blister. And rather than just feeling the blister when he stepped, as we can all imagine, he started to get into the habit of anticipating the blister before he stepped down, feeling the blister once he stepped, and then replaying it between steps. And so too, if our life truly is very stressful, we can divide our stress by a third. So making it just, sorry, by 2/3, right? By just experiencing it when it's actually happening and learning how to unhook from the anticipating and then the replaying, which we'll talk more about. Is this relatable to people, the habit of overthinking and that compounding stress? Okay. All right. And just to illustrate, the problem with overthinking is not just what it does to our minds and the torture that it causes us privately, but overthinking also messes with our behavior. And so, just a quick story that I share in my book. But, um, one morning, something that unfolded in my house was my husband was pouring a gallon of milk. He literally spilled a gallon of milk while he was in a rush. And he quickly started to clean up the milk that had spilled on the floor. And then he cut his hand on the kick plate at the bottom of our refrigerator. And then to make matters worse, we didn't have bandages in the house. And so he needed to go to the drugstore to get a bandage. And then he was replaying like what a terrible day he had. And yes, as I gave you a sneak preview of in the slide, he ended up getting into a fender bender. And so too, in our own lives, we could take something, and obviously a lot that we're facing is not just spilled milk, it's much more than that. But the replaying is going to compound not only the toll it takes on us psychologically, but also the behaviors. Like it's easy if you're rethinking something upsetting that happened to you or frustrating that happened with someone else to take that out on a partner or a family member in a way that's not going to help, but just create more enduring damage. Is this experience relatable to people of something stressful happens and then kind of getting into a stress tornado? Okay. And so to stop this cycle, how do we stop this cycle? Even just slowing down and feeling your feet on the floor, like if between the spilling the milk or replaying the steps, or repaying the pain of the blister, if we can take a slow down, sorry, if we can all do this together now, we can feel our feet grounded on the floor. Do a quick 3-point check. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What do I feel like doing in this moment? Then asking ourselves, is this helpful? Is this bringing me closer to my long-term goals? So I love the idea of just constantly checking in with yourself because going 5 miles an hour, we're not going to do the damage control that we're going to do at 120 miles an hour. And this is something that just takes a few seconds, right? To have on a post-it, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What do I feel like doing? Is this bringing me closer to the life that I want? So it's really hard after you say like some sort of mean thing to someone or send an aggressive text or engage in a faux pas to feel like you have to do so much cleanup. But if we could get ahead of that and slow down in the first place, it will be so much easier. And so just taking a look again at the thinking, feeling, doing is one way to slow down at the forefront. But now we're going to come back to those parts of the stress cycle one by one and talk about a path forward at each step. And so if you're someone that tends to get lost in negative thoughts, which is something that many people do, just by show of hands, who finds that they get lost in negative thoughts? Um, so it's very unfortunate that like we tend to be so critical of ourselves. Does anyone find that if they make a mistake, rather than being kind to themselves and speaking to themselves like they would want a friend to speak to them, they are their worst critic or biggest enemy, really go over it over and over again, maybe in like the equivalent of large capital letters and almost like they're screaming at themselves. And so, an alternative to this is practicing loving kindness meditation. These are all pages from my book, but one of my favorite mind resets, and this is helpful to do before you even face something difficult, just as a good way to warm up and to set the tone, is to practice loving kindness meditation. So, loving kindness meditation is a specific practice where you go through a series of steps. You bring to mind someone that naturally evokes warm feelings, if it's a pet, if it's a grandchild, if it's a grandparent, and bring this person to the forefront of your mind and think, may this person be happy. May they be healthy. May they be safe. May they live with ease. You do that for like a minute, really fully saying the words almost like you're giving gifts, not just doing lip service. May they be happy, healthy, safe, live with ease. And then you do this for yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. And then you do this with a host of other people, familiar strangers, someone that you see at the grocery store. You could do this for someone slightly difficult, all beings. And this might just sound like, oh, this is a nice idea, but there's actually a lot of research on loving kindness meditation. And it is something that really helps reduce being self critical. And we also know that a huge way to reduce stress is to increase social support. And like stress, a lot of social support is perceived social support, how close we feel, how much we feel supported by others. And by practicing loving kindness meditation, we actually increase our sense of connection and community. And so this can be a really nice practice. Since different things work for different people and our minds can be so slippery that we need a lot of different skills. Another skill that I like teaching when it comes to getting out of negative thought loops is even just categorically noticing what state of mind you're in. We all have an emotion mind, times when we're governed by just intense emotions. Maybe people that are afraid of flying, if there's a lot of turbulence, you think the plane is going to crash, the plane is going to crash, even though there's no evidence that turbulence predicts crashing. We all have a reasonable mind when we're just focused on the facts. We also have a wise mind where head and heart combined. It's like something feels good and it's reasonable. Maybe it's like deciding to go on a specific trip that's within your budget and also feels like the right thing to do at this time. So simply even noticing after something stressful occurs that you might be an emotion mind is a quick way to kind of put yourself in perspective and almost see, like we do with our emails, that maybe this is almost like a spam filter, so you're not getting lost in thinking that's really governed by intense emotions. And finally, a lot of our thoughts we need to pay attention to, and a lot of our thoughts are helpful to us, but 80 to 99% of people report having unwanted, intrusive, negative thoughts. We all maybe have thoughts like, I'm not good enough, no one likes me enough, I'm not as good as this other person, if I was only better. And some of those thoughts are just downright silly. And so to save like our mind for what we need it for, we need to kind of conserve our energy and learn to play with the thoughts that aren't serving us. And so if you have a recurrent unwanted thought that's just not serving you in your life, I love teaching my clients to sing those thoughts. And so if you don't want to sing it to a depressing song because that could make it feel real, but if you could sing the thought like, I'm a loser, or no one likes me, to the tune of something like, do you believe in magic? If you hear some friends got together without you or didn't invite you to something that you maybe thought, or a friend forgot your birthday, rather than taking something that's hard and making it that much harder, like picking it a scab, learning to sing that thought. And that doesn't mean that you don't call the friend and ask, hey, what happened? I was disappointed that I heard about this and I felt excluded. But maybe you need to do a little bit of this first, because calling your friend, thinking from the headspace of thinking, I'm always excluded, nothing's going to work out is not a great starting off point to have a meaningful conversation. And so, because the song is so joyful, I will just play it for one moment to give you a taste. And so, I don't know if anyone feels comfortable, but I think it's so relatable that we all have these thoughts. Does anyone feel comfortable sharing a thought that they have that they know is just noise that creeps up when they're having a hard time? I know this takes a lot of courage, but does anyone have, like, it's a little hard to see show of hands. I don't know if Jerry, you see anyone's hands. Anyone have a thought that's I'm not enough or
Time is running out.
time is running out? And that's an interesting one because that might be inspirational. Like, I want to seize the day and I want to do the things that really matter to me. And so we don't want to do this with a thought that could help. Like, I don't want to do this with I need to, start a big project. But if I think of it in a way that's not helpful, like I'm on vacation and it's making me, this is something that I do, like the last couple of days of vacation, and it steals the joy from the last days of vacation, then maybe that thought would be helpful. Like, time is running out if that's just gonna, or steal some of the ability to be present. Does that make sense? We don't want to do this for all thoughts. We just want to do it for the thoughts that aren't helping. And so time is running out could be helpful if it inspires us to do the things that we care about, but it's not helpful when it makes us miss this moment. So just to give you a taste.
I don't.
Can you hear this?
Sound is working.
Can you hear this?
No, no,
Is the sound working? Can you hear it?
no,
Okay, okay. Is everyone familiar with the song? Do you believe in magic?
yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we talked a little bit about thoughts, and there's so many other stress resets to deal with, how to get unstuck from your thoughts, which is a habit that a lot of us want to work on, myself included. Now let's talk a little bit about body sensations, because it can be really hard to reset if your body feels like it's rebelling against you. And so, again, it's human nature if you start to feel intense sensations to start to fight. Is everyone familiar with those like Chinese finger traps where you put your fingers in and when you try to pull out, the toy constricts and so you're more stuck? Is everyone familiar with that?
Yeah.
And so too, when you start to say, I can't breathe, I need to relax, that is almost like a Chinese finger trap. It is extremely difficult when you are fighting against your body for your body to on demand feel differently. And so one of the things that I teach my clients and that I talk about in the book is learning to welcome physical sensations in a host of ways. We can welcome them by practicing acceptance. There's a lot I say about radical acceptance, really, truly, wholeheartedly accepting. If I accept shortness of breath, that's very different from micromanaging and policing and judging or taking a pill in response to it. And one very practical way that I teach people to do this is if someone notices when they're stressed, they tend to have a specific physical sensation, maybe feeling hot or sweaty, or I don't know, short of breath. I practice helping people recreate those very physical sensations ahead of time, not during the stressful thing. But if you know that if you get on a plane or if you're about to give a speech or you're about to have a difficult conversation with your daughter-in-law, that you're going to have certain physical sensations rather than those feeling like a pop quiz and you don't know what to do with them, to practice recreating those in a safe environment for a minute. You can certainly do this with a therapist if you're working with someone that's trained in this, because it can be a little intimidating to do on your own. But that said, a lot of people find this, they do practice on their own and they do find it to be helpful. So recreating, if I practice hyperventilating for a minute, I come to see that that's a very temporary experience. It's not terrifying, and it's something that my breath then breathes itself once I am done doing that on purpose. So a little bit like the film clips, experientially realizing that things that we tell ourselves are terrible actually are quite fleeting when we stay present. And so since I don't just want people to feel like they need to hyperventilate, I also want people to feel like they can slow down. One of my favorite practices that I talk about in the book that I think is really useful, regardless of what's going on in your life, is to practice slow breathing. On average, many of us breathe quite quickly. And a lot of times we are anxious because we're breathing too quickly, and we breathe too quickly because we're anxious. But if we learn how to slow breathe, that is a great preventative medicine way to feel more spacious in difficult moments. And as part of my book, I actually interviewed two psychiatrists who have largely moved away from prescribing medications, who now prescribe breath work. And Dr. Patricia Gerbarg and Dr. Richard Brown, these are psychiatrists from Columbia University in New York, very reputable institution. They actually have seen such profound results from teaching these breathing exercises that they're working with disaster survivors to teach these breathing techniques across the world in Ukraine and elsewhere. And I was shocked when they told me that this is actually, people are saying that things are happening, terrible things are happening around us, but we feel centered within us. And this was so inspiring to me to hear that I'm actually donating a percentage of profits from my book to their organization called Breath, Body, Mind Foundation. And I am hopeful that even if you cannot hear this, there's a visual of a ball moving up and down that helps you pace your breathing in this video. And I'm hopeful that we could just practice for just a moment, even if you can't hear the sound, to breathe in parallel with the ball moving upwards and to breathe out in tandem with the ball moving downwards. Okay. Any observations? Maybe we'll check it out on feedback at the end. But this is something that if you have the time, a lot of experts recommend trying this for 20 minutes a day. And then if you have less time, even 5 minutes has been found to reduce blood pressure. And then finally, this tool that kind of takes us all, uses all the other parts of this, is approaching your life, approaching the things that matter to you. I call it opposite action because if we take a step back and we notice, when we're sad, sadness isn't just a feeling, it's also a behavior. When we're anxious, anxiety isn't just a feeling, it's also avoiding and worrying and asking for reassurance. Feeling angry isn't just something that in us, but it's also yelling and judging and thinking the worst. And so, a huge way to cope with stress is to start to take one step forward and to think about, what is the thing that I would do if I wasn't feeling this way? And then this doesn't only change your behavior, but this also helps you come to accept your body. It also helps you change your view. And so it sounds quite simple, but one of the most powerful tools in all behavior therapies across the board, whether it's for relationship distress, doing loving gestures, whether it's for grief, starting to resume some activities that you once enjoyed. Opposite action across the board is one of the best tools. And it really needs to be opposite action. You can't be doing something difficult and telling yourself it's not going to go well because that wouldn't work, or starting your day, if you have a big task to do, starting with busy work rather than the main event that is most important, is not going to give you this feeling of like, I can do this. So we need to kind of be thoughtful about how to do this, about doing actually the most important thing and doing it with our head helping us, not derailing us. And so finally, I hope through the conversation today, you're starting to think a little bit about ways to stop vicious cycles and start virtuous ones where we improve how we think, we improve how we feel physically, we improve our behaviors. And this isn't only for us, right? This is also for the people around us, because in teams, when a manager has positive views of their ability to cope with stress, that improves their team's ability to cope with stress. But the flip side is also true. When we're stressed, that can also be contagious. When we're ruminating out loud, venting, that can spread our stress beyond ourselves. But by knowing and believing that we can feel centered when stress starts to creep up in our lives, and it's not even creeping up, it's something that we all have to face. It's the price of a meaningful life. Knowing that we can cope is so powerful for us and also for the people around us. And I just want to highlight that peace of mind is not life being easy, but knowing that you can count on yourself regardless of what shows up in your life. And I know that all of us can cope with remarkably hard things, and we have coped with remarkably hard things. And it's so helpful to realize that we have the tools within us. We don't need to be reaching for tools outside of us. And especially in these hard times, I want people to know that a little can go a long way, both with improving their life and improving the lives of other people. Something very small, telling someone that you're thinking about them, can reduce their stress and make profound impact that you might not appreciate in the moment. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to talk to you.